Well, let's start and look at the whole issue of the urgency. Citizens had a chance to really look at the urgency in connection with climate change, and they were asked 3 questions. To what extent are you concerned about climate change? How urgent do you think it is to make a global climate deal? If a new climate deal is made at Copenhagen, would the politicians in your country give high priority to joining it? Now, those are some fairly difficult questions to address. Dr. Snyder, I would like to begin with you. And based on your reviews of the results on urgency, on the issues of urgency, what do you think citizens are saying about the problem?
Well, of course, people get information from multiple sources, and some sources, do stress the legitimate urgency of the melting Arctic and the fires in the western North America, the destruction of a large fraction of the conifer trees right there in British Columbia, for example, that are associated with warming. And then there are others who hear, well, it's only going to be mild for a while. So you have, inevitably, you're going to get that multiplicity of views. But I think that most people who put the trouble in to learn something about the issue have generally pre-concluded that they don't think it's a good idea to mess around with the planetary life support system. So in a way, we have a group of people who've sort of voted with their feet because they really care about the sustainability of the planet for their children, grandchildren, and the rest of creatures. So we're getting, I thought, pretty good sense that the bulk of people feel the problem has enough urgency that not only should we be acting now, but we probably should have been acting a while ago. So it would be easier to act now. So I've gotten that feel. Certainly people worry about sea level. They worry about melting Arctic. They worry about difficulty in growing food in poor countries and about the relocation of people living in small island states who did almost nothing to create the problem that's threatening their literal future as nations.
Dr. Winter, over to you. When you looked specifically at the urgency issues and the results, did you see any trends or patterns, any ideas that emerged from those results?
Well, one thing I would like to point out to start is that there was a question about how much people actually knew about global warming. And I was rather surprised to see that in most of the groups, there was a pretty good level of knowledge. People thought they knew the issues either very well or pretty well, or at least they'd heard something. The exceptions were from countries that we know have very strong limitations on public media, what news gets out to the people. But in general, I think the level of understanding seems to be pretty strong. There was a consistently high expression of concern about global warming, and I would say this strikes me as a much stronger indication than what we hear, at least from the politicians in the USA. It was a much higher level of just pure concern for this very urgent question. And I think there was also equally, going down the list of questions asked, an overwhelmingly strong sense of urgency for achieving a strong climate agreement in Copenhagen. It's strongly suggested that people didn't want a kind of watered-down compromise. That what I would say is that people in these groups seem to be saying that they want the problem to be tackled head-on rather than to have the delegates in Copenhagen reach what is a sort of politically acceptable or politically doable agreement that doesn't measure up to the real problem.
Dr. Sklo, you had a chance to watch the Boston consultations today. What was your sense of what happened in that room around this issue of urgency?
The group in Boston was about 80 people. They were tremendously diverse in terms of race and ethnicity, in terms of age, and balanced in terms of gender. And I think that what would impress everybody in the room who was observing was the tremendous seriousness of purpose and dedication and close attention to the issues and to each other's opinions that we saw throughout the day. And it was a very long day, and there was no flagging of attention, no giggling or getting distracted, just tremendous seriousness of purpose. And I think my hypothesis is that what that reflects is there's a tremendous thirst on the part of people everywhere to have a real meaningful voice in the global decisions that they know are going to affect them and their descendants. And when you give people an opportunity like this, they very much rise to the occasion. In terms of the specifics of urgency that were reflected in the room, I'm looking at some of the numbers. In the room in Boston, 97% of the citizens said it was urgent to reach a deal in Copenhagen. 99% said it was important that if a deal is reached, the U.S. should sign on to it. And an astonishing 96% said that the industrialized countries, including the U.S., that their carbon dioxide emissions reduction targets should be more ambitious than those proposed by the Obama administration.